Welcome to the new workshop. So, it's been a long time since I've posted, and a lot of things have happened since then. I left Audi. I've now moved to a BMW workshop dealership, so there's that. Yeah, we lost the lease at the farm, so now we've had to get a new workshop, which actually worked out quite nice because, as you can see, this place is top class. Let me show you around. So at the moment, you can see we got automatic roller door, storage cabinet over here. Inside the cabinet, we've got a whole bunch of fluids, some equipment, jack stands, so on and so forth, bin bags. So it's just somewhere we keep some of our stuff. Josh's bikes are still here. Those will be moving at some point so Charlie can bring his Integra. Josh's Civic. The tools hung up at the back. Nice little spot where our tools are. It's a bit messy at the moment, but yeah. The other side of that is a toilet, which, bro, how dope is this? Mirror, extraction fan. You know, not only that, we have a fully functioning kitchen with a little fridge and a microwave, so mans can make some lunch and dinner late, maybe if we're staying late. We got heaters and a frame for like lighting fixture at the top here. Yeah, so we can turn the heaters on in winter when it gets cold. We've got the roller door, big fan for some fresh air in summer when it's hot. Beautiful day for what you would say is an autumn day, I guess. Weather's going away. Oh, look, my new food. Nah, I can't work on BMWs anymore because it would be a conflict of interest. But I no longer have the restraints of conflict of interest when it comes to working on Volkswagen Group products anymore, like Audis, because I don't work for them anymore. So now I can actively do more Audis. I need to put the trim piece back onto the back of the ute, the bucky, and then we're going to talk about that, because if any of you remember partly from the previous videos, that is the same Golf R that we did a whole bunch of work on, that another dealership had pretty much quoted, including coolant repairs. You know, we did the heater core matrix, we did the coolant pump and thermostat regulator. We did, what else did we do? We did, can't remember, we did service on it. There was a whole bunch of stuff that we did on this car. And we replaced the oil pressure switch, low pressure oil pressure switch, and still has the same problem where once the oil gets hot, if the oil pressure just slowly tapers off. I'll try to show you what that looks like if I can now. But yeah, the oil pressure slowly tapers off and then it sits at a very low oil pressure. So the closing threshold of the oil pressure switch, or the low pressure oil pressure switch, I think is 550 to 850 millibar. And the actual oil pressure once the oil is hot and at idle is sitting at about 350, 400. So it's just below their threshold. So each time you blip the throttle a bit, it picks up and closes the switch and the warning that's on the cluster goes away, but it will eventually drop lower than that. The downside of that is the engine has definitely been opened up, because I dropped the oil pan off it and I had a look, and what you would call the girdle plate, or the housing that the oil pressure regulator valve sits in, right, and controls, you know, varies the oil pressure. You can see it's been removed. It's got different bolts, you know, like some bolts that have just been put in there because they couldn't find the original bolts, as well as the original bolts, and there's engine sealant everywhere. So pretty much I'm doing this job for another dealership where I'm at the point where I'm probably gonna have to strip the engine down, see what's going on, because as I told him, the likelihood is there's two situations with this. Either this guy had this issue for whatever reason and somebody went looking for it, couldn't find it, couldn't find it, put it back together, or did find something and just put it back together and got rid of the car. Or some work was done on the engine, and after putting it back together, we're now sitting with this situation where it's got an oil pressure issue. So other than that, today I'm not going to be really working on a car. The thing that I need to do is I need to neaten this place up, because as you can see, we've been here for a few months. I'm trying to tap the screen to get it going, but there's shit lying everywhere. So that setup needs to be sorted out as well. Some stuff that I need to take pictures of that I'm going to put up online for sale. And then ideally I want to be mounting a screen up there and have a PC set up with a screen that can swivel out, maybe a large TV, like a 55-inch TV with a screen that can swivel out, where you can do whatever you need to do online, wiring diagrams, whatever you can. And if you're working on the engine here, you can actually swing the screen out and you can do whatever you need to do. Are we going to be putting a hoist in? I don't know, because at the moment there's 3 of us that are sharing this workshop. The reason being, we split the rent between the 3 of us. It's a bit of a lighter load. So a hoist is can't take away a lot of space, although it would be great. But we'll see how things go in the future, whether that becomes an option. But yeah, as you can see at the back there, it's the landlord's got a whole bunch of items for his business. He does like disaster prep, so there's an agreement that he can store items there, and then he covers the electricity, which is a bonus for us, because that would be an extra expense. But pretty much all the equipment is in here. We just got to figure out where we're going to put stuff. A lot of the stuff is going to be mounted on the walls and so on and so forth at some point, but for now we're just gonna try and neaten up the place a bit to make it look a bit more presentable and workable, if that's the idea. But first I need to put the cover back on the ute. I had to take this trim piece off. It's the same as the bin liner, because I needed to deliver something, so let's do that. So yeah, I'm not too sure exactly what I want to do with this place. If we're just going to run it as a workshop, do recordings of us, fixing cars and so on and so forth, or if this is going to be more of a, we're going to buy some cars and try to fix them and flip them for a profit. I don't even know if that's an option in this current global climate, if you will, because yeah, a whole bunch of really rich people are shooting bombs at each other, and us, the average man, has to suffer the consequences. God bless the elite, right? They can go there, they can go there, one goes there, one goes there, one goes there. No, they need to be the other way around, like so. So yeah, things have started to settle down a little bit. I guess time is going to be a bit more of a constraint for me, starting at a new shop, but we'll take it as it comes, I guess. The main thing is that we're going to figure out how we're going to do these things. I guess mainly like what's going to be the best content, Does this go? Oh, these must go here as well, yeah. Because ultimately that's the idea, it's just to make some good content, But yeah, because the channel's kind of not only been dormant for a while, but it's been in one of those things where I've not been sure where and how I'm going to take it. It started off, I don't know if any of you watched the really early content, it started off as me and my project Pajero, where I was going to try to put Lexus 1UZFE, yeah, into a Pajero, and that ended up halting because I needed to make some money to go home and visit my family. My father had a heart attack, and it was touch and go for a while. He's doing much better now, but it was a situation where I needed to go home because I wasn't sure how, you know, if I was ever going to be able to see him again. And if that was the case, I needed to make sure I would go home and see him one last time. So there was that. The other side of that is that once I sold the Pajero, I started getting really busy and making quite a bit of money fixing cars, you know, and I made quite a bit of content off that, but yeah, it seemed like it started to take on its own course, but I was always kind of rushed for time, so I couldn't really spend time going over details and such things in the content of what I was doing, how I was repairing things, what was going on. So it was kind of just time-lapsey, and I wasn't too happy with the way that was going. So I need to redo this insulation as well. I'll do that at a later stage. For now, just need to go back. So yeah, it was a strange time for me personally, and the fact that the offer from BMW came through, and it was a really good offer, I got to be honest. You know, there was questions in my mind: am I doing the right thing by trying to maybe start my own business, or should I stick in the lane that I'm in? You know, because starting your own business doesn't exactly mean you're going to have more time or more money. You know, that's a very common misconception that people make, and I know that. So the idea of what the channel is going to be is still up there. So if you've got any suggestions, feel free to chip in. Let's change this angle a bit, why don't we? How's that? A little bit better, huh? So yeah, questions. It's one of those things that I have to figure out. I mean, I'm not trying to pretend that I don't need much. 4 Newton meters, even less than that, 1 Newton meter. No, well, that one held. This one should hold. Spark. Put the caps back on. So yeah, this is the business park where we're at. Quite a nice place. Some people around. There's another mechanic over there. There's a tire shop, wheel alignment shop, whatever you want to call it, around the back. So there's a bit of opportunity to do work. I think I'm going to put up some signage, a sticker on the window or the door itself, on the window, on the door. Maybe move the landlord's business name here and here, and just put a company's, because I've registered it as a sole trader, but I'm trying to run it as an independent shop sort of thing. So yeah, there's that. Nice, like it was. I should probably put on the tonneau cover, because that's taking up a lot of space, as is everything else. Take my sunglasses off. So yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. So right now, I mean, this is going to be the first car back on the channel. It's going to be the car that we strip to figure out what's going on. Have no idea where to start. I would like to replace the oil control valve, or at least I'm going to pull the oil control valve out and have a look at that and see what I find in regards to that. Jeez, like, I just want to see if there's anything in the port that may be causing a blockage or preventing the control valve from operating correctly, which cause a restriction. Not necessarily an oil pressure restriction, but maybe an oil flow restriction, therefore you know, causing the oil pressure light to come on. It's, yeah, it's a touch and go situation, huh?
We got to start somewhere. Forgive me for all the bird feces. I will be cleaning the mighty Triton as soon as I can. On the other side of that, I'll go on.
So yeah, pretty much that's where we're at. I just wanted to make a short little video showing off the new place basically and what the plans are. And yeah, I'm going to start cleaning up. I'm not going to record the cleanup because it's not necessary. You guys don't need to see that boring content. Although that for Loki, ironically, would probably be the best performing video to everything else. Everything else I tried doesn't work. But yeah, so I'm going to clean up this bench and then I'll bring you back when we've got it a bit neater. Okay, a little bit better. A little bit better. So yeah, so the PC will lay on top here, and then once I get it running, we're going to put a TV up here and little mouse, cheap mouse and keyboard, and then we can run like a PC system operation there. We can play some music, whatever the case may be, look at wiring diagrams, so on and so forth. But for now, what I want to do is I want to show you just as a little end to this video. I want to show you what this car does, so you can get an idea of how this oil pressure system, this oil pressure regulation system works on the Volkswagen Audi systems, and yeah, what the car is actually doing. And I don't have an oil pressure gauge, so I can't show you physically the oil pressure, but I have checked it, and when it's hot at idle, it's sitting at about 350 to 400 millibar. And when it's cold, oil pressure is bang on, and you slowly watch the oil pressure drop as the oil gets hotter, because as the oil gets hotter, it gets thinner, and as it thins out, whatever is leaking or bleeding that oil pressure off, that, you know, gap or that leak becomes bigger. It, you know, more oil will bypass it and you'll have a bigger drop in pressure. So let's do that quickly. We'll connect VCDS and we'll have a look.
I actually need to make VCDS a bit bigger because it's a bit small for this screen. So I can't remember how to do that again. We go options, configuration.
One eternity later.
And we'll say save. And then we'll exit, and then we'll restart VCDS again. That's much better. So you'll see a bit here. So let's connect old VCI in. Oh, come on. There we go. Ignition is on. So we'll come through here. We'll go select engine control unit, and we'll look at the fault codes because they'll still be stored. So as you can see here, we've got 3 fault codes. We've got our oil pressure switch for reduced oil pressure, all right, and we have oil pressure regulating valve and evap emissions control system flow. I'm not worried about that. So these 2 are the ones that I'm worried about, right? Oil pressure regulation valve, that's the valve that the ECU uses to control oil pressure, whether it's running in high pressure or low pressure mode. And then the oil pressure switch for reduced oil pressure is the switch that monitors when the engine control unit is in low pressure mode versus the switch that monitors when the engine control unit is in high pressure mode, right? So what I mean by that is I'll just turn these lights off. So I don't know if you can see. I'll try. Take the head unit off.
make this a bit easier. Get the torch. So I don't know if you can see, but that switch right there that the torch is pointing to, actually I'll just do this, this will be better. So this switch right here that I'm pointing to, right, is the oil pressure switch for reduced oil pressure. The blue one just next to it, which you cannot see right there, is the oil pressure switch for high engine oil pressure, right? And below it right there is, if I'm not mistaken, that's the oil pressure control valve for the piston jet cooling function, which is not one we're worried about. And down at the bottom is the oil pressure valve or regulating valve for oil pressure control. Okay, so this top switch is the switch that's supposed to close when oil pressure is in low pressure mode and high pressure mode, because it'll be exceeding its opening and closing output, right, which is between 350 and 550 millibar. The high pressure switch is a switch that will only close when the oil pressure is in high pressure mode, right? So basically what's happening is the oil pressure is dropping too low, running at around 350 to 450 millibar, and both those switches are going open. And when they go open, the engine control unit knows that the oil pressure is below its threshold, its minimum threshold, right? The control unit, there's no actual oil pressure sensor that monitors the oil pressure as an actual value, as a data put that you can see in PSI or bar what the oil pressure is. The engine control unit basically controls the oil pressure system, or the oil supply system, through three switches: the oil pressure for reduced oil pressure, the oil pressure switch for reduced oil pressure, the oil pressure switch for increased oil pressure, and then the piston cooling jet activation oil pressure switch, which sits on the side of the engine underneath the intake manifold, I believe. And basically that is when that control valve for the piston cooling jets, those jets that sit underneath the pistons that spray oil at the bottom of the piston to cool them down, when that control valve opens and the engine control unit wants oil pressure to go to those jets to cool the pistons down, then that switch tells the engine control unit that there's oil pressure in that gallery. And the oil pressure pretty much is controlled by those three switches. So now, the thing that we got to watch for, okay, so we're going to go back and we're going to go to advanced measured values, and we are going to go to oil. Okay, I'm going to do something quickly because this beep is going to annoy the shit out of me. Once from controller, that's because I was an idiot and disconnected. So we're going to go back into engine control unit again. Come on, I'll make communicate. Here we go. Advanced measured values, and we're going to go oil. So we're going to say engine oil temperature, oil pressure switch valve actuation, status of oil pressure switch, status of oil pressure switch, oil pressure switch for piston cooling, oil pressure switch valve activation, short trip activation of oil pressure switch valve. That'll be for no, we don't need that one. And then we'll have RPM, that'll be a good one. Critical speed off BM, and we'll close that. And now, as you can see, all the switches, let's just stretch this out, okay, all the switches for the cooling jets, for the low pressure and for the high pressure, all are open. There's no oil pressure in the engine currently because it's running, right? Not running, sorry. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the engine, and you'll see that all of these except for the oil pressure switch for the piston cooling jets will move to a closed state because there'll be actual oil pressure at them. Now I need to state that this
has had a service. It's got the right oil it needs, which is VW504 507 if I'm not mistaken, 5W30. It's got a genuine oil filter in it. The oil level is correct. So from that standpoint, we don't have anything to worry about. So we'll go here, start the engine, and as you can see, close, closed, open. So the engine control unit is now operating the engine in high pressure mode because it's an early startup, right? It needs oil pressure to be around and it's in warm-up phase. As the oil pressure is going to increase, right? Or sorry, as the oil temperature increases, this value or the engine control unit will then move the, sorry, I'm duffing this up. Let me start again. So once the warm-up phase is done and the engine is in a warm phase but not at operating temperature, the engine control unit will switch this oil pressure control valve into low pressure mode, and you will see that the high pressure switch will go open and the low pressure switch will stay closed. And as the oil gradually increases and gets to about 60 degrees Celsius, the low pressure switch will start to go closed, open, closed, open, closed, open, as the oil pressure is slowly tapering off. So we're going to leave this to warm up, and then when I come back we'll show you what that's happening. But as you can see right now, it's perfectly fine. See, the only warning on the cluster at the current moment is the tire pressure warning, right? In terms of why, as you can see, those are the two warnings. So the door status for the bonnet being open and check pressure loss for the front left or front right tire. So we don't have any other warnings. Okay, you see we're at 22 degrees Celsius oil temperature. Everything still seems to be fine. So we'll come back when we start seeing everything playing around. Side note as well, there's no real engine noise, there's no knocking noises or anything coming from the engine that leads me to believe there's some sort of bearing wear or anything. As I say, I have replaced this with a genuine filter, and I checked the previous filter, there were no metal filings in the filter as well. So in terms of engine damage, I don't think it's related to that, though you can see by the markings on the upper timing cover, as well as several other things like incorrect bolts and the lower part of the engine having the timing covers are full of different color sealants. There's way too much sealant being used. The fact that the bolts are different on the housing for the oil pressure control valve, which is like sort of the girdle plate, or the, what do you want to say, the lower crankcase, second section of the sump or the oil pan, or whatever you want to call it. You know, you can see that that's been removed because the bolts are completely incorrect, and it was put together slapdash in a hurry. So this engine has definitely been opened up to a degree. How much, I don't know, but it's definitely been opened up. So it leads to big questions. Why was the issue there before or after? So that's where we are at the moment. All right, so here's an interesting one for you. As you can see, the engine control unit is still running in high pressure mode, but look at the oil pressure switch for high pressure. It's open. So the oil pressure is already starting to taper off as the temperature increases, right? So we'll keep an eye on that. At some point this is going to move into low pressure mode, which I would expect that pressure switch to stay open, which is normal, and the low pressure switch to stay closed. But what happens is we'll be in low pressure mode. The oil temperature will be high enough that this switch will open because the oil pressure is not high enough. So now, as an experiment, if I tap the accelerator pedal while you watch the data pit, you'll see that that oil pressure switch for high pressure will close. See that? Just a slight tap. So this is what I'm saying about the oil pressure being just below its minimum threshold for each switch's activation, which is a clear indication that oil pressure is bleeding off somewhere in the engine. We know that the pressure switches have been replaced. It's not them. We know that the oil pump was replaced. It's not that. It could be the oil pressure regulator valve itself, with the amount of sealant that's on that housing. Maybe that there's some sort of a restriction in operation. It's jamming the regulator valve, even though the valve is trying to control oil pressure, and this is what's causing the bleed off. We don't know. I know that the engine ECU is operating correctly because I can see its control logic while the engine is running. As well with VCDS, you can change the engine's oil control system to run at a high pressure mode, as if you've just done an engine replacement or rebuild, which you would want to do for a certain period of time during a run-in phase. And when I set that parameter to run in high pressure mode permanently, you see that the oil pressure switch, the oil pressure control valve, you see that the valve is constantly operating in high pressure mode, but the characteristic of the switches is exactly the same. The hotter the oil gets, the slower and slower, or the lower and lower the oil pressure becomes, and that slow bleed off happens, that taper of oil pressure happens. So we'll come back later and I'll show you again how the low pressure switch is going to operate when that happens. Alrighty, so now we're exactly where I wanted to start off. Now you see the engine has now switched the valve into low pressure mode. So now the engine oil pressure should be operating at a lower pressure, right, to reduce load on the engine, which is for emissions. Great fun, right? And the oil pressure switch for the high pressure is open, which you would expect. The low pressure is still closed, but if you watch it over time, you'll see that the oil pressure is slowly going to increase, slowly going to increase, slowly going to increase. Sorry, not oil pressure. You will see that the oil temperature is going to slowly increase, and once it starts getting to about 60-70 degrees Celsius, you'll see that this switch will start to go in like a switching state, open closed, open closed, open closed the whole time. And that's that characteristic of that oil pressure just bleeding off slowly over time. So I'm going to set up the GoPro so you guys can watch that, and yeah, I'll speed it up over time on DaVinci so that it doesn't take so much time. You can stop that recording. Cool. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, oil pressure stop. See, owner's manual. Alright, and as you can see, 99 degrees Celsius, engine RPM, engine is operating in low oil pressure mode, and all of the switches are open. This oil pressure switch for low pressure should still be closed. Now, as we did earlier, I'll show you what I mean where, shut up. Now if I blip the throttle, right? If I blip the throttle, watch the low pressure oil switch. See that? I don't even increase the RPM that much. We may be doubling the RPM ever so slightly, and you see the oil pressure closes. So looking at this, I don't think I have a circuit issue, I don't think I have an engine control unit issue, and I don't think I have a hardware problem. I think I have this to me screams internal oil pressure loss inside the engine. Okay, like I said, unfortunately I can't show you with a physical gauge because I don't have it here, but I have done an actual oil pressure check with the gauge, and I can tell you that it sits about 350 to 400 millibar. And I know for a fact that this oil pressure switch for low pressure opens between 350 and 550 millibar. I think I actually have the old one here somewhere, which I can show you, for example. Oh, there it is. Okay, so this is the switch, right? It's got the same brown connector. Now if I remove this cap, I don't know if you can see that, but let me just make sure this is visible while I'm recording it. So I don't know if you can see. Sorry, the damn camera died as I was trying to show you this. I can't seem to see if I can get the oil pressure value in. And focus. Focus. I don't know if it's showing it. I don't know. It's tough to see on the GoPro. What I'll do is I'll take a picture and I'll put it on DaVinci for you. But yes, so now this is what I'm saying. So now we're going to do something a little bit different, right? So now we're going to try something to sort of verify our diagnosis. Maybe not verify diagnosis, but just give us a little bit of reassurance that we're on the right path, right? So this is what we're going to do. Now, I'm going to shut off the engine. I'm going to turn the ignition switch on. We're going to go into basic settings. No, because we said yes, I need to close. Don't go back. Okay, so basic settings. We're going to go into basic settings now. We're going to find our basic setting for where are you? So my mistake, we need to go into adaptation. So when we go into adaptation, we're going to select channel, our engine running oil pressure. Now this will set new value, active. Now this will set the engine to run in high pressure mode permanently. Okay, so we say do it. Controller accepted the request, and now we'll read the channel again. Now it's active. Okay, so now if we go back, we go to our basics, we go to our advanced measured values again, we select oil. All right, we're gonna go oil temperature, we're gonna go oil pressure switch. See, it's already set at high pressure, right? Our other switch, and we're gonna go to, and we're just gonna select oil pressure switch for piston cooling jet function. All are open. And then for the giggles, we are gonna put RPM as well. Right? So now, as it stands, when we start this vehicle up, engine oil temperature is at 100 degrees. It'll go down a little bit as the engine runs when it goes to the cooler. This engine should operate at high pressure, which means the oil pressure switch for low pressure and the oil pressure switch for high pressure should close. And we should see the data pit on both of those close or move into the closed state, right? Which will tell us that the engine is operating at its maximum oil pressure. Okay, so let's start the engine and see what happens. Now, boop, there you go. Did you see how immediately it changes over? We're running in high pressure mode right now. These switches should be closed. And again, same symptom. If I just blip the throttle slightly, it moves into a closed state. So that tells us that the oil pressure is just below its minimum threshold. Just enough bleed off is occurring for it to not have enough pressure to close that switch, and thus the engine control unit is logging that fault. I'm running the engine in constant high pressure mode. So one of two things is happening. We either have a faulty valve or we have a problem inside the engine. Evidence based on what I found tells me that it's probably something inside the engine, which is why the engine was opened, or after the engine was opened, we're sitting with this situation. But we probably should change that valve first as a prerequisite. There was another basic setting that I saw that I want to run just for giggles. Alright, so before we close off this video, I want to quickly just run an oil pressure control system test using VCDS with some action values to show you that the engine control unit can actively control the oil pressures through the rev range, and that it's such a small bleed off that it's not enough to happen at higher RPM, because the pump's delivery at higher RPM or at more rotations overcomes the pressure loss. So we're gonna start, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. We're gonna start the engine. We're gonna go in to the engine ECU again. We're gonna go into basic setting. We are going to select test of changeover of oil pressure valve, and we'll get some measured values up. So oil, we're gonna have oil temp, we're gonna have oil pressure control valve state. Oh no, don't do this to me, VCDS. Do not do this to me, VCDS. Give me a second while I deal with VCDS. No, I don't want to clear codes. I want to exit VCDS. Yo! I need to update my VCDS. Now the problem is... Okay, hold on. Let's just close VCDS normally. Go back, exit. Alright. What I need to do is set it to run as admin as well. Alright, let's start again. So, we'll cycle the ignition. Off. On. Select. However long this is going to take. Engine control units. Basic setting. Test of changeover for oil pressure. Our data, we're going to go oil. We're going to select temperature. We're going to select regulator valve status. Oil pressure switch or status of oil pressure switch. I'm always selecting the piston jet as well, so that we can monitor that circuit as well. Like if there's any oil pressure going into the piston jets and it's bleeding off through the piston jets, we should be able to see it there. So that's a better way for us to monitor if the pressure loss is in that area of the engine, you know, in theory at least. So we're going to close this off. All right, so now I'll start the system. Hopefully it runs through first time, and then you'll be able to watch the values on the laptop, and you can see how the engine control unit will be controlling it through low pressure, high pressure as the RPM increases, and then changes the control valve state, and the switches will change. Right, once again, if it is so minutely below the minimum threshold for the low pressure switch, just open this up, that just touching the accelerator slightly causes it to go to a closed state. So we know it's just a little bit too low. All right, so now what I'll do is we'll hit go, operate brake pedal, operate accelerator pedal. Now watch, as the RPM increases, high pressure mode, switch closes, engine control unit is then going to put low pressure mode, switch opens, and the routine is going to finish in saying it's okay. So from a standpoint there, everything from a control base point is functioning fine. The engine control unit can control the valve can change its state, the states we can see changing on the actual VCDS data pad, and we can see the switches opening and closing when they're supposed to. So everything from a control standpoint is correct. This leads me to believe that it's not a valve, it's not engine control unit, it's not circuitry, it's nothing like that. It's most definitely going to be a mechanical issue inside the engine. Now, whether we like it or not is irrespective. Most likely the engine's going to have to be opened up, and we're going to have to figure out where this oil pressure is coming from. I know that some of these EA888s have issues with the balancer shafts, I believe, where oil pressure issues arrive, but I don't know for sure if that's what issue we have here. Ultimately, there's nothing much more I can do. I mean, I've already changed the state or the control, the system control. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. I'm just yapping. I moved it. I changed it from operating its adaptation from operating at high pressure mode all the time, and I put it back to normal, so it'll change depending on RPM. I mean, if we rev it up to 3000, it changes on its own. So that confirms exactly what we need to know to pretty much lead us in the direction of we're going to have to open up this engine. So basically, having said a lot of nothing, that's the next step. So this video pretty much doesn't have anything other than me just showing you what's going on with this car, where we're going next, and how I've diagnosed it, and how the system works basically if you've got one of these engines. But yeah, and I got a text message from one of my friends, my mates, who's sharing the rent with us, who wants to buy a house now, so he needs to, well, he has to pretty much pull out of paying for his share. So yeah, it's been a day of good news. But anyway,
we'll figure it out. We always figure it out. Just got to pray on it and see what the good Lord says we should do. But for now, we're gonna close up today. I'm gonna go edit this video and put it online. So yeah, if you're watching, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and maybe I'll make enough money to keep this workshop, which currently at the moment doesn't look likely. Sweet. Love you all. Look after yourselves. Peace.